Okay, they said yesterday someone did take. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 412 Test Wing STEM event this year. What a wonderful week it has been, and I'm so glad that you can all join me today. And I'm excited to share with you my journey, my professional journey, as well as some stories that will go back to high school. And just as a reminder, before we get started, we do have a text-in number for questions. So it's 707-412-8922. If you have any questions, feel free to text them in, and we'll have someone who can ask them to me as we go throughout the briefing as well as afterwards. So let's go ahead and get started. So I thought I would start by sharing with everyone just some of the things that I love doing. That is a bunch of pictures here. I'm not sure, can they see? Okay, awesome. So if you can see on the slide, you have pictures of me being athletic. I love to run. Just recently really started getting into it, and I'm hoping to do a marathon next year. So you can see that it's a big passion of mine. Very outdoorsy, so I like to kind of just be in the forest and hiking. And then, in the ocean, you'll see me doing some yoga paddleboarding, which was a lot harder than maybe it looks sometimes. There were definitely some flops over into the water while trying to do that. And then in the bottom left, you'll see some of the more extreme activities that I just really have a passion for. Everything from underwater scuba diving and exploring the ocean to exploring the air through skydiving. And then, of course, I balance that out with some mindfulness practices like meditation and yoga. You'll also see there in the very center, which is the center of my life, my 3 children. So being a mother is really important to me. And right now my kids are in preschool, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade, and they keep me busy, but also very balanced when it comes to my career, my personal fun activities, and then being a mom and helping them grow up into incredible human beings. And then 3 other areas in there. I love reading, and that's something that I know as a child and growing up, you're always told you should read more, it's going to make you really smart. I did not enjoy reading growing up, so I don't know if anyone else out there is in that same boat. I read because I had to, because it was an assignment in school, but it wasn't until just a few years ago where I really challenged myself to see if reading could be a passion, so that I could learn more. And I challenged myself to try to read 50 books in 1 year. And the number of books I had read in the prior 10 years was probably a number I could count on my hands. So it was a big challenge, but it was something I wanted to really push myself to do. And I did that through audiobooks and reading hard copy books. And I got through 44 books that year, which just proved to me that I could do anything I really wanted to do as long as I made it a priority in my life. And so since then, I found that I love reading, and I love reading the material that is interesting to me. And so reading is a big part of my life, and learning in general. And then with learning comes giving back. So I also enjoy teaching, whether it's leadership classes or speaking at different events where I can encourage others with the knowledge that I've gained through self-study. And then the top right, I love to cook. And that was something that during the pandemic I got better at, and I just wanted to learn. I think that's probably a very common story for many people as we were quarantined in our homes, just cooking for ourselves and learning cool different things. So that's me in a nutshell on the personal side, kind of just to humanize what I really enjoy doing on my free time. And so then next, I kind of wanted to share with everyone what I believe my purpose is. Right now, I call it my purpose in progress, because I wanted to share with all of you just what drives me. And I want to start off by saying this isn't something I knew when I was 10 years old or 20 years old or even 30 years old, not quite 40 yet, but it's something that has evolved over my life and has become something that I'm more aware of as I try new things and learn about myself as well as what I'm passionate about. So some of my passions would include really just trying to integrate my personal and my professional life so that, maybe it's not a 50-50 balance, but it's something that works for me, and that's different for everybody. So as you, as students, as you grow up and you go into college, you're going to have to figure out what that integration looks like for you, and it can be challenging at times, especially when you have a lot of really fun opportunities, but you also need to make sure that you're properly integrating your studies and learning and doing well in school, which will set you off on the right foot for your career. And then as far as my profession, I'll go into more detail with some slides, but I'm an engineer, I'm a leader in the STEM field. So right now I am very rarely sitting at a computer doing analysis with data. That's something that I did early on in my career, but now it's more of the leadership role in leading people, developing others, and trying to help people get to where they want to be in their careers. And then I have my future dream, and this is to move into the cognitive neuroscience field and help support the DoD and the Air Force with their technical research in that area. So I'm looking forward to that next chapter down the road. And that's something that, just for you, if you're sitting there thinking like, I don't know what I want to do with my life, or I don't know what I'm passionate about, or what degree I want to study when I go to college, I'll tell you that it's okay. It's okay not to know right away what it is that you want to do. I started out with aerospace engineering and moved into systems engineering for my graduate degree, and finished that about 5 or 6 years ago without ever knowing that neuroscience was something I'd be interested in. That was something that came up within the last few years, and I started learning more about it and realizing that it's something I really love. So don't worry if you don't know what you want to study or what you want to do with your life right now. There's time and space for you to develop your passions and find them. And that requires going out of your comfort zone sometimes to see what those are. And then as far as vocation, so I really want to spend a good amount of my time improving the way we do STEM and trying to inspire girls to go into STEM. I feel like we're doing so much better. If you look 10 or 20 years ago, when I was in college, maybe there were 3 of 100 of us in a classroom that were women. And so I really want to encourage and inspire girls who have that affinity for the STEM field to not be fearful and to go into it. And I'm seeing a growth in the percentage of women in this field, so it makes me really happy to see that. And then also teaching. So I always thought I was lacking the teaching gene. My mom is a teacher, and somehow speaking in public and speaking to people was terrifying. And so I thought I just missed that gene growing, like I was born without it. And turns out it's just something you have to get good at through practice. And I found that to be a common theme in life. If there's something that you want to try or do, give it a shot. Don't quit after the first time if it's hard, but keep going and keep practicing, and you will get better if it's something important to you. So I love to teach, and specifically in the areas of leadership and wellness and mindfulness. And as far as what I feel like my mission is in life and how it's developed over my career is really to do coaching mothers who are in the STEM field trying to figure out the integration of work and life, as well as other senior leaders in the STEM field so that they can do the same. And all of that put together kind of leads to my purpose in progress, which I know can change. And that's to really shift the culture of the STEM field so we can be more inclusive of women and science-based mindfulness as well. All right. So that's a little bit about my personal life, my purpose as I see it today. And I wanted to step off in the next portion of this talk with a quote, and it's the waiting and the meantime, the in-between. Every part of that is purposeful. And I hope that you'll trust that and you'll see that, and that you honor the delays and the detours in your life, in your education, and your career. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those detours for me and how they ended up being very beneficial for me and for my personal growth as well as my career progression. So here's my academic and professional timeline. I started out in 2002 going to UC San Diego to get my aerospace engineering degree. And I chose that degree because I grew up from a child wanting to be an astronaut. So it was one of those, I'm going to go into aerospace, be a rocket scientist. And in fact, I wanted to join the military as well and be a fighter pilot. And that, would eventually lead to perhaps being an astronaut. So when I began my education at UC San Diego, I also enrolled in the Navy ROTC program. And as it turns out, that lasted one entire semester before I realized it just really wasn't for me. And I was a little bit disheartened thinking that, my life goal was done with. But instead, I continued to pursue, aerospace and figured maybe there was something else out there for me. And if you skip ahead, you'll see, I made it to Edwards and was able to still serve in a capacity that supported our military, and as well as later on in my career was able to become a flight test engineer and actually fly an F-16s in the back seat. So all things have a purpose and work out for the greater good if you can trust in the process and the struggle and keep pushing. So after I got my undergrad, I interned while I was in school, and then I came to Edwards, and I've been at Edwards since 2006, so 15 years working here, everything from being an F-16 weapons integration engineer to bombers with B-1, and then to F-16 and F-15 as a flight test engineer. And some of those experiences really pushed me outside my comfort zone. And the whole public speaking thing, some of those roles you had to speak to large groups of people, speak on the radio, and all of that was terrifying. But I knew that from some of the prior experiences that if I could push myself outside my comfort zone, I could grow and I could become the person that I'm supposed to be. So then after I did some flight test engineering with F-15, I went back to school and got my master's degree in systems architecting and engineering from USC. And I chose that field because it's a very broad field and can apply to all sorts of other subdisciplines. And for me, that was where I really wanted to focus, was on the bigger picture of things versus specializing in a specific field. Once I finished my master's degree, I came back to Edwards, and I served for a little while in the capacity of a technical expert in the field that I'd been an engineer in, which was weapons integration, and then moved into a supervisory role in that department, and eventually jumped up to be my career position right now, which is a squadron director. I would say all of my positions have been amazing, but I love the job I'm in right now because I don't see it as a job. I really get to care for people and to try to remove roadblocks and make other people's dreams a reality. So that is my academic and my professional timeline. I'll go to the next slide to show you. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the words in bold in those positions, those are the ones that I never really expected and really pushed me outside my comfort zone. And without those, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I just challenge you as you go through high school and into college and into your professional careers to remember that when you're offered an opportunity, if you don't think that you're good enough for it, you're being asked because somebody else believes in you. And I would encourage you to really consider going for it and putting yourself out there, because I guarantee you'll grow and you'll learn a lot. All right. So here are just some photos, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I've talked about my career, but I just wanted to share with you some of the photos. And on the left-hand side here, that is me in the centrifuge going 9Gs. So that is what my face and my body looks like under 9Gs. So a little self-deprecating there. But I really appreciated that time where I got to fly in the back seat. And then some of the other pictures just show testing. That is the B-1, doing some weapons drops. The top middle is me teaching leadership classes here on base. And that's one of the things I love about Edwards, is just the ability to do the things that you love, and you're not pigeonholed into one specific focus of your career. You get to really branch out and do what you enjoy doing. And then on the right-hand side is another female engineer and myself at a female engineering STEM event. And the bottom right is when I assumed command of my current role. All right. So I live by this quote. I love it. I'm a quote person, if you hadn't noticed. They really help remind me and recenter me. This one says, "We all have two lives. The second one starts when we realize we only have one," which I feel like is a very profound statement. And that is to encourage you to remember that you have the one life and to make the most of it. And in order to do that, you really need to understand how to integrate your personal and professional life. And I realize that most of the people watching this right now are probably not in their career. They're in school. You guys are, high schoolers or younger, and you will for sure come to a time where it will be difficult to set your priorities and figure out what you want to do. But I would encourage you to be very intentional with your time and setting those priorities, because your education is important as well as your personal life. And there are going to be times where it's not a 50-50 balance. There may be times where you are spending 90% of your time studying and for your education. And I guarantee you that that is worth it. And that later on that percentage might diminish and you'll get to have some more fun. But just give yourself permission to live that integration, that balance that you choose that works for you and works for your goals, and to keep that in mind. And then these last two are kind of ones that really have stuck with me and I've learned over the course of my life. And it's that not everyone's going to understand what your balance is or what your integration is or how you're living your life. And some people will judge you, but I encourage you to show up anyway and to live the life that is of your dreams and that is in pursuit of your passions and your goals. And to always, when you're feeling like maybe you haven't gotten to where you are or there's some roadblock, just remember where you are and how far you've come. Often giving briefings like this one and having to put together pictures and slides, it reminds me of how far I've come and the things that I've had to live through and work through. So I'd encourage you to maybe do the same. Keep, a journal or some means that helps you remember what you've been through and how far you've come, because it will remind you of your strength as you continue to maybe run into a roadblock or a challenge in your life. All right, and then to close out, one of the most important things for me in my life and over the course of my career that has helped me get to where I am today has been people. I for sure have not gotten here by myself. I would not be here if it weren't for family, friends, mentors, leaders in my life. So I encourage you to find your tribe and to find the people that will support you no matter what, who will hold you accountable, and who will help just remind you of what your dreams are and your desires are and just how strong you are, how smart you are. Whatever it is that you're battling with, know who that tribe is and know who those people are that you can go to. It might be a coach from school or a teacher, a friend, a parent. There's a variety of different types of people, but they're who's going to help you through the difficult times, the challenges, and keep you motivated and going, and just remind you how incredible you are and that you're on a journey that is going to get you to become the person you're supposed to be. So I love Dave Asprey's quote here on the bottom, and it not only takes a village, it takes the right village. So build yours with intention, and that is so critical, right? Surround yourselves with friends who will support you and encourage you, and try not to surround yourself with the counterpart and those who are not encouraging to you. So this is the end of my briefing, and I forgot to remind you throughout, but there is that text-in number that maybe have popped up on the screen a couple times here, and that is 707-412-8922. So please feel free to text in some questions if you have any. I'm an open book. I'd love to share with you, and I appreciate you giving me the time to speak to you today and to impart the wisdom that I've learned throughout my life, personally and professionally. And I wish you guys all the best as you go through school and your academic and professional life. So with that, I will pass it over for questions, and we'll get started.
All right, ma'am. We do have a few. Okay. Well, the first questions is, what was your least favorite and most favorite part of school?
Ooh, that's a great question. Okay, so my most favorite part is what I'll start with, and that was just the ability to be involved in so many different activities. Because when I was in high school and college, you could join, any club you wanted to, right? You got to choose what was fun to you. And I've definitely been known to take on way more than probably a normal person should. In high school, that meant being a part of the band. So I played flute as well as being a cheerleader, not something that you typically see paired. But I also did science clubs and religious clubs and things like that. But I loved the ability that you could have your academics as well as some fun ways to connect with other people. And then that held true in college as well, some of the professional societies like AIAA, and having fun. And then my least part of school, I would have to say it was my inability to prioritize sometimes. I think I would let some of the fun things get in the way of my academics and studying. And I'll tell you, when I was in high school, I did well. I was able to focus, but I probably burned myself out. And also, I was a lot younger, so had a lot more energy than I do, in my current age. But in college, I think that ability to prioritize was still being honed. And so I would generally spend more time doing the academic clubs like AIAA instead of studying. And you could see that in grades were, average, they weren't great. But then when I look into my graduate school and I'd finally learned how to prioritize in life and, focus on my academics when I needed to. And I went through graduate school with flying colors because I knew how to prioritize. So it turns out that my least favorite part in high school and undergrad turned into my favorite part in grad school.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Kind of a follow-up question. What is your favorite and least favorite parts of your job, your current career?
Sure. So my favorite part of my job is getting to see others succeed in what they are trying to do and to help people win, right? Like to help them get to where they want to go, whether that's mentoring someone and encouraging them and seeing them go out on their own and, get the job they were not sure if they were qualified for, or to step out and to do something that's uncomfortable, or just helping people, get to where they want to go. That's by far my favorite part. I'm definitely the people-oriented person. And in that, you get to see people succeed and achieve in the projects that they're working on, which then ties into us defending our country. And you see us being able to support and defend like our airmen who are deployed in the projects that we work on. So I love that I can take my passion for people and apply it downstream. My least favorite part of my job, which I think can be said across any profession, not just STEM, is probably just bureaucracy. And sometimes it can take longer to get things done than you want to, and it's a little more challenging. But in that, I do always appreciate a challenge, and it makes it more rewarding. If everything is always given to you easily, it's not quite as much fun. So despite the bureaucracy being my least favorite part of my job, I love the challenge. And then when you do succeed at what you've been trying, it feels so much more worthwhile.
Awesome, thank you. You mentioned before that you wanted to be an astronaut growing up. Is that still true? And if so, what does the path ahead look like?
Thank you. Yeah, that's another great question. Well, I will say that I have a path, and it has changed every couple years, I feel like. And that was one lesson I've learned over my career. In the beginning, everything was very structured, and I would lay out a plan that was almost monthly for the rest of my career as far as what I needed to be doing in order to get to where I wanted to go. And because I did that, the detours and the challenges were very disheartening because it threw me off the path that I thought was the only path to get to where I wanted to go. And so lately, having learned that lesson, I do have paths, but they are more generic and more broad, which allows me to be more adaptable and flexible when changes occur. So for right now, like I said, a few years ago, I fell in love with neuroscience, which is not something that we really focus on here at Edwards. But I continued to learn about it on my own time, and I am hopefully pursuing furthered education in that field down the road in the form of a PhD. And I've got some of the background as far as the flying time and the master's and bachelor's education, which will help. I try to integrate with NASA when I can to try to aid my chances. But for now, it's not about necessarily the end goal of being an astronaut, but loving what I do that hopefully leads me there. So the path really is just continue doing what I love and finding ways that can integrate. So for me with neuroscience, there's application with neurotechnology in the Air Force, so I can continue to serve in the Department of Defense and eventually hope that technology that is being researched and developed will make its way into space, and perhaps I can be the person to take that technology into space, and that will be my avenue. But if it's not, I'm just going to keep doing what I love and eventually get there. As many of you might know, we're sending more and more civilians into space, so that is also really exciting for me to know that there's not just the one avenue of NASA to go into space, but now, Space for Humanity and SpaceX, and there's a lot of different avenues to make it into space. So for right now, like I said, I trust my struggles, I trust my path, and I trust all the detours. And if I get to go to space someday, I will be thrilled. If I don't make it to space, I will have done things that I love my entire life, and I won't be sad for it.
Sounds like you went either way.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you had to fly in an F-16. What are some of the things you had to do to prepare for that mentally and physically? And would you say it was more exciting or scary overall?
Oh, that's a big question, and it's a great one. So in order to prepare for that, there's extensive training that you go through, and it's everything from ground survival and water survival training, as well as going into the centrifuge. And if you remember that picture from before, that's probably the most memorable piece of the training that you go through, because it's the first time for most of us that we've ever felt going under a significant amount of G-force. And in that training, you're spun and until you're feeling up to 9 Gs in different profiles. And I'll tell you, it's exhausting and it's a new experience. It's not scary by any means, but it's just something that, the people who are going through this training really want to do what they're there for, right? They want to go fly, so they're going to give their all, and for sure it's totally worth it. And you're there with a team of other people, so you're all experiencing that same pressure of being under 9 Gs, and what that feels like. And after that, there's other training as far as understanding the emergency procedures of the aircraft, so that if something happens while on the ground or airborne, you're able to respond appropriately and quickly to be able to mitigate the damage and stuff like that. And I had one experience being airborne in an IFE where we had smoke in the cockpit. And I'll tell you, the pilot and I, it was our first time flying together, but we worked as a well-oiled machine and went through the EPs, and the plane was landed within a matter of minutes. And we're met with the fire department. So everyone on base just really works as a well-oiled machine and a team, so that we keep our folks safe. And the training that you do to prepare for that is really critical, and you know that when you're doing the training. So you're prepared if something happens like that. What was the follow-on? So the training.
If it was more exciting or scary,
Oh,
or what was most exciting or scary about it?
Oh man, the only part that was scary is that I would screw up. The actual going in the plane was so exciting. I remember my very first flight was testing auto GCAS, and I was just excited to be there. The only scary part is that I would say something really dumb over the radio that the entire control room would hear, or I would screw up the test somehow. But the actual part of flying was just so much fun. I mean, there's so many experiences where, flying through the clouds or doing different maneuvers that I love. And I think that's a part of my personality and who I am. Most people say start off by saying that I tend to gravitate toward extreme sports. And I would say that it's actually gravitation towards a very mindful-based Zen sports, because all of these things like skydiving, scuba diving, flying in fighter jets, you can't view them as an extreme sport. You can't be amped up and just unfocused. You have to be very Zen-minded, and you have to know what you're there for, what your mission is, be prepared for emergencies should they come up, all while having fun. So I typically am not super scared. I will say the first time I jumped out of a plane, not connected to anybody, I was scared up until the point that I was falling through the sky, and then I was really excited.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
What would you consider is your greatest achievement professionally, and what would you consider is your biggest setback?
Ooh. Let's see. My greatest achievement, I don't think I would pinpoint it to one specific achievement. It would just be a generalization of saying yes when I was completely scared and wanted to say no. And I remember, it kind of ties back into the conversation of flying. I just started to really put myself out of my comfort zone and started reaping the rewards of that. And I remember being called into my squadron commander's office with the director of projects and chief engineer and being asked if I'd be interested in being a test conductor. And I asked some questions, and it came down to, well, as a test conductor, you're going to be leading a team of people through briefings, in a control room, speaking on the radio. And, the world is going to hear you, and if you screw up, they're also going to hear that. And, that's okay. But it was terrifying to me. I definitely did not like public speaking. That was something that was really scary for me. And I remember them throwing the cherry on top of like, well, we really aren't having civilians fly right now, but it's possible that could happen for you without having gone through test pilot school. And that was just the little nudge of like, oh, I could actually fly. It'll be worth it. I'll push myself outside my comfort zone. And, one thing always leads to another. You grow a little bit, then you're more prepared to take on the next big challenge that's scary. So I'd say my greatest achievement is really just continuing to say yes to the opportunities that seem really scary and put me out of my comfort zone. My greatest setback, I don't have anything that really comes to mind, not that I don't have setbacks, but I think it's the idea of having that mindset that you can take a setback and it can work for the greater good. And those are those detours, right? Like I remember wanting to go to TPS and apply for TPS earlier in my career, and instead accepting a different position and thinking like that was a setback, right? Like, oh, if I can't go to TPS, I can never fly. And it turns out if you fast forward 3 years later, I'm in an F-16 and I didn't go through TPS. So those are the things where there are things that don't go according to the plan, but if you can reframe what's in your mind, you can turn that setback into a positive experience and a growth experience.
Fantastic. It's a really good point about not viewing setbacks as setbacks, but as a detour instead.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, were there any decisions that you made that seemed very minor at the time that ended up having a huge impact on you?
Yeah, so there are so many things that seem like small decisions that have a profound impact on your life and your career. And typically for me, those are again, they tend to be things that put you outside your comfort zone. It could be something as simple as I was once at a dinner with the chief scientist of the Air Force. There were a bunch of us there. And I remember being so intimidated by who she was that I didn't want to ask a question or say anything. And at the end, I mustered up the courage to go up and ask her a question, then ask if she'd be willing to mentor me. And you think like, man, would you really ask someone of that caliber to mentor a young engineer? And she said, absolutely, I would love to. And it's things like that where you raise your hand or you ask a question, or you ask someone to mentor you, or you say yes to an opportunity that seems minor at the time, but puts someone in your path that helps you get to where you're supposed to be. And And I see that all the time, right? Like making connections with people and networking is so important, just building those relationships. I honestly feel like the relationship side of our profession is how you get work done, right? Because you as one individual can't know everything and you can't do everything. You have to rely on other people and work in teams. So being the kind of person that is a good teammate and a good wingman, or as I've heard, a wingmate, is really the way that we can accomplish our mission. And so it's those minor moments of meeting someone and following up, following with people that I think are profound.
Great point. So basically, don't be afraid to ask for things you want.
Yeah, and ask for help too, right? That's a huge thing that I struggled with early on, but sometimes just asking someone for advice or to listen can be really helpful too.
Cool. Do you think that lunar or space colonization will be a thing in our lifetime for civilians?
Absolutely. So I'm very much excited for this. As far as lunar colonization for civilians, I think we're a little bit further out. But I joined through the pandemic. I don't know how many of the folks on the line joined Clubhouse, but I got involved with that, and there's a space-related club on there. And it just opened my mind to what people are already working on today to colonize the moon, to make space a place for civilians. And before that, I really just wasn't aware of all the work being done as far as how we're going to get to the moon and what we could do when we get there. But seeing some of the recent accomplishments through SpaceX and sending civilians into space, I was a huge proponent. I am a huge proponent of St. Jude. So seeing the Inspiration 4 mission go off just recently, sending civilians into space was just incredible. And we're seeing it time and time again now. So I imagine, in the next 10 years or so, we're going to see a lot more of that. Where I would love to see us move toward from the civilian side into space is more into a longer duration research focus. And I know that when the Inspiration 4 mission went up with civilians, they did do research in their 3 days in space. But I'd love to see more long-term, kind of like what NASA does, 6-month durations where civilians can go up and work on their research projects while on the moon or in space. And one of these days, I'd love to make it to Mars if we can make that a safe trip.
Awesome. What innovation technologies do you know of that you would like to see implemented more, either in your career field or in general?
So I'll go a little bit of both. I think we're in the current career field, and it's a part of my squadron, the 812 Test Support Squadron. We're doing a lot of work trying to progress our data analytics and data science work here on the base so that we can do more effective and efficient testing and data collection. We have a whole team of statisticians who help us make sure that we're collecting the right amount of data, that we can analyze it appropriately and defend that data and our results as well. So I'd love to see us continue moving further into the data science field and integrating that into flight test. And then outside of my immediate career, as I've mentioned, neuroscience is a huge passion of mine, and I love the research that's going on right now as far as neurotechnology via non-invasive and invasive brain-machine interface. So that's like, you might put a computer chip into your brain or a structure that's non-invasively on your head that will allow you to adapt your brain states. And whether that's helping you stay more focused so you can have more effective training, or to be able to control electronic devices with your brain. I mean, that's something that I think we're getting very close to, and the applications are huge, right? You have a fighter pilot who is under 9 Gs trying to maneuver and be evasive from an enemy. There's a lot that they have to do, and that was something that my eyes were open to as a flight test engineer, just seeing everything that a pilot has to work through. At the same time, it's mind-blowing and incredible, and they're incredible human beings. But if we can take a pilot under 9 Gs, instead of them having to maneuver their bodies and their hands to actuate switches and do maneuvers, if they can use their brain for some of that, and not have to move under those conditions, I think that would be incredible. And then also taking that application to astronauts in space who have, muscle atrophy and things like that, who are under Gs on return to Earth. That's the technology that I would love to see developed. I think that there's a very small amount of our brains that we really understand, scientifically speaking, and I'd love to see that furthered, which is why I want to go into that field and do some research there.
Awesome. So time for one more question. As we hear a lot about innovation as people realize that we can't keep doing business the same way that we have been, what are some skills that are needed for innovation, and how can we develop those skills with ourselves and teach them to others?
Great question. So I think one of the greatest skills needed in order to innovate is an open mind. The ability to really dream big and outside of the box, and to not contain your thinking to be small-minded. So, dream up the impossible and then be confident that you can get there. That's probably the most important thing with innovating. It's, to the counter when people think they just, we can never get there, or that's impossible. Those are the mindsets that are going to stop us from innovating. And innovation is not an individual effort, it's a team effort. Like I said, people are the reason, and relationships are the reason why we're able to get to where we need to be. So just because you have an idea, if you don't know how to carry out the idea, that doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means you need to meet the right person who maybe has the skill set to carry out that idea. So I would say mindset's probably the most important thing. And then also resilience. So I'll tell you, when you have a really great idea that could be life-changing or technology-changing, you're probably going to have a lot of people that are going to think you're crazy. And in order to be resilient and push back and continue to fight the good fight for, what could be life-altering and technology-altering. So mindset and resilience, I think, are the most important things with innovation.
Fantastic. Thank you. So that's all the time we have time for today. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone, the entire team here, Halita Van Hoy for setting this up and the base for promoting STEM. And I'm really encouraged that we have so many attendees who are listening this entire week. And I hope that you are motivated and you go out and continue to just be amazing human beings and fight for your dreams and your goals in life. And I also want to thank everyone that's behind the scenes that's, making this come off without a hitch. So thank you, everyone, the whole team that's making this a reality. And that's it. Thanks, everyone, for joining the 412 Test Wing STEM event.